Discussion is mainly on the role of doctors, lawyers, health, climate change, and social scientists play in the creation of content and how audiences, primarily women, as well as content creators, get empowered through the process. The moderator for this first panel discussion is Professor Gary Lyons. Professor Gary Lyons is an award-winning playwright, screenwriter, and producer who has written for the National Theatre and extensively for television and radio. Professor Lyons is the program director for the MA in Writing for Performance and Publication, University of Leeds, which he has designed and has led since 2002. Our panelists, first panelist is Mr. Sanjay Tripathi. Mr. Sanjay Tripathi is a film and television producer and director. A graduate in physics from Delhi University, Mr. Tripathi started his career as a science journalist with India Today Group's magazine, Computers Today. Apart from his regular documentary assignments for international channels, he recently wrote and directed the critically acclaimed and award-winning Hindi feature film Club 60 and is presently writing and producing an upcoming medical drama for a leading television channel. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sanjay Tripathi. Our third panelist, Mr. Suhail Tatari, is a prominent Indian film and television director. He has directed television shows of note like the iconic Surabhi on Doordarshan. Mr. Tatari's directorial debut in Bollywood was with Summer 2007, which was an issue-based film followed by Ankur Arora Murder Case 2013, both social issue-based films. He believes in combining social messages and entertainment in his films. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Suhail Tatari. Our next panelist, Ms. Deepa Sahi. Ms. Deepa Sahi is an Indian actress and producer who is best known for her role as Maya in the 1992 movie Maya Memsab opposite Shah Rukh Khan. She made her directorial debut with the movie Tere Mere Fere in 2011. Besides this, she has produced 12 television series and is a promoter of Maya Entertainment Private Limited, one of India's leading animation studios. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Deepa Sahi. Dr. Sanjay Badwar is a consultant ENT surgeon at Kokilaben Ambani Hospital. Dr. Badwar has more than 19 years of experience in the field of ENT. He has done advanced training from a Voice Institute in Portland, USA. Dr. Badwar did a fellowship in head neck surgical oncology with the Tata Memorial Hospital. He also did a fellowship in laryngology, voice disorders, phonosurgery, laser, and voice clinic, Portland, USA. He has held several distinguished positions within the Armed Forces Medical Services, including Professor in Head ENT Head Neck Service at INHS Ashwini and Army Hospital Research and Referral, New Delhi. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sanjeev Badwar. Dr. Nikhil Datar is founder and chief consultant gynecologist, Datar Nursing Home, medical director of Yashoda Maternity Hospital, and is also attached to Nanavati Hospital and Hinduja Healthcare Surgical as consultant gynecologist. What makes this doctor very special and even more entertaining is the fact that he holds a law degree, an LLB, from the Mumbai University and a diploma in hospital administration. He is also the founder of the Patient Safety Alliance, PSA, an NGO that works for the rights of patients. Known for his legal battle in the famous case of Niketa Mehta, who was his patient, he fought for her right of abortion at the Bombay High Court in 2008 and is currently fighting the case himself at the Supreme Court of India. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Nikhil Datar. Our next panelist, Dr. Lata Shenava. Dr. Lata Shenava holds a doctoral degree in the role of families in the promotion of child mental health. She has been working in the field of special education, mentally challenged, for the last 28 years and in medical social work for the last 20 years. Dr. Shenava was awarded the Fulbright Junior Research Fellowship affiliated to the Center for Play Therapy, University of North Texas, where her areas of specialization were play and filial therapy and use of expressive methodologies. Ms. Shenava is an emotional intelligence certified therapist. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lata Shenava. Our next panelist, Mrs. Gajra Kothari. Mrs. Gajra Kothari is an author and award-winning scriptwriter. She has published 2 short story collections titled Fragile Victories and The Last Laugh, and 2 novels, Broken Melodies in 2011 and Once Upon a Star in 2015, to critical acclaim. In 2013, she co-authored a Hindi novel called Kora Kagaz. She has written the story, screenplay for several iconic television shows, including Astitva, Ek Prem Kahani, Jyoti, Veera, and Buddha, and has been doing story development for the show Balika Vadhu since its inception. The show has crossed the 1,833 episode mark on the 3rd of March 2015 to now hold a record for being the longest running Hindi fiction soap in India. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Gajra Kothari. Professor Lyons, I request you to please take the discussion forward. Thank you so much.
I started the master's program, which was mentioned earlier, in 2006, and ever since its inception, I've had this steady trickle of Indian students find their way to Leeds to study with me. After a while, I thought, well, there's a pattern here. Something is evidently going on that I ought to investigate a little further. So I took it upon myself to come to India early last year to do a lecture and workshop tour of a number of cities, including Mumbai, and at a workshop that was hosted by one of my ex-students, Zara Chowdhury. Is she here? I can't see her. Anyway, she runs a small film company in Mumbai, and she hosted a workshop in association with the Third Eye, and a number of members of the Third Eye were able to come and take part in that workshop. And as a result of that, discussions between myself and the Third Eye have continued, which has eventually led to the Leeds University, my university, sponsoring this event here today. So I started my career at 17 when I left school as a local newspaper reporter, so I suppose all my work has been informed, or a lot of my work has been informed to a greater or lesser extent by factual research and engagement with experts and specialists in their fields. And when I started in a more concerted way writing for Big Series TV in the UK, which was in the late 80s, early 90s, working on police shows, medical shows, a show called Soldier Soldier, which was about soldiers and their wives and families in the barracks rather than in their fighting context. A series about a high school called Chalkface. All of those series, which are mainstream peak time British series, used a number of specialists and experts in their fields as technical advisors to the shows. And I learned through that experience, I suppose, that technical advisors can be enormously valuable on more than just a level of bringing people in at the last minute to maybe give an extra kind of additional element of authenticity and fact to a script that had already been written, but actually that engagement with an expert at a very early stage of series developments and storylining can open up all sorts of avenues for exploration of character and give ideas for storylines that if you were reliant entirely on your own imagination as a writer, you wouldn't have stumbled across. And moving ahead to 2003-04, I developed a trilogy of one-off dramas for Britain's Channel 4, which is, I suppose, the most progressive drama-making channel in the UK. These shows, one was about motor neuron disease, another one was about street crime, and the third one was about a multiracial relationship. Again, I used experts extensively at the very early stages of development as a way of helping me develop the storylines and the characters, which I felt not only brought a kind of authenticity to the fact of the action, but actually, and this may be something that people want to reflect on during the course of this session, I felt that it helps me structure the emotional pattern of the stories. And in a way, for me, that's the most important element of drama making, of drama writing, is unlocking the emotions of the characters as a way of engaging most strongly with audiences, and we can talk about that in more detail as the session continues. So I suppose that was the sort of the last thing I wanted to say before I hand over to these distinguished guests, really, is to reflect on the impact that specialists and experts can have at the very earliest stages of story creation in the way that they can help you really identify the specifics of the kind of emotional range of the stories that you're trying to tell. So perhaps we can move to our special guest here. I wonder if we can move to you first, as since it's International Women's Day.
I developed the story for this show called Balika Vadhu, which we've just created history as of breaking a record yesterday. We are the longest running Hindi fiction show in India. But it's not just the numbers. I would like to believe this is a pioneering show which is known for having woven the social messaging along with a very entertaining style of storytelling, and it all begins with the story, good or bad. It's not that we have only got bouquets for what we have done. I've got plenty of brickbats also. But coming back to the point of ultimately connecting with the audience, because it's the emotion and the drama that you trigger off, which is entertaining for the audience to view. And it is that which is a tool in our hand to be able to give the message which the experts would like us to have delivered, not in a very talking down manner, but in a manner which connects with the audience, which is always a challenge, because the audience in India is not a uniform, one class, one thinking, one educational level audience. There are many Indias, there's a Bharat, there is an India, and there are lots and lots of people to connect with who have varying mindsets. In the course of developing the story of Balika Vadhu, which is about a child bride, one of the first things that we all assumed, all of us, my senior colleague Purnendu Shekhar, who is the person from whom the concept has come, he has seen it very closely because he comes from a region where child marriage is very intensely in practice. And all of us down the line who were researching the issue of child marriage, we all felt, okay, child marriage is something illegal, it's not supposed to happen. And therefore, when we came to a certain point in the story, we felt that we got into the mind of one of the characters there who said, fine, I've been married as a child, I don't agree with what happened to me, so I'm going to go ahead and marry as an adult, and that marriage is going to be the valid and the correct one. And this is what we as makers believed too, until we met an expert. We met an expert who actually layer by layer peeled for us what the law really said. And that changed our course of storytelling for the next couple of months. The law actually said that even when two children are married against their will, after they turn 18, if within 3 years they do not complain that they were married forcibly, and they have managed to, as adults, approve of each other, then their marriage is as solid and as legal as any other marriage. It's not an illegal marriage. So we were faced with a situation in our storytelling where a legal opinion completely altered our course of storytelling when we had reached this point maybe around 2 years ago. So that's the importance of law, and that we felt as a team so wonderful that we ourselves were educated and we were able to impart this to our viewers who might have been under the same misapprehensions as we had been until some time ago. So I can't underestimate the power of getting the expert opinion from lawyers, from medical experts, and from social activists, which is the very concept that we are here to discuss. So I think it's just wonderful. It's so important for all of us to interact on this.
Deepa, I wonder if we could turn to you now. Have you got any reflections on working with experts and specialists in your particular work?
I think of those of us here in India who have studied cinema or been around for some time. I remember in '95 there was a movie with Mithun Chakravarti where these things only happen on the day you're getting married in Hindi films. So on the day he was getting married, somebody shoots him. So the idea is to discover who shot him. So Kader Khan comes up with a great idea. He says, sir, to Suresh Oberoi, remove his brain, put it in a deep freezer, put it into somebody who needs a brain. And once that person revives, he will tell you himself who shot him. And believe me, this was not done in a joke. This was not a farce. This was really happening in the movie. So Suresh Oberoi looks very serious, and he takes off Mithun Chakravarti's brain, opens a oven-like thing which says deep freeze, and on a plate he puts it in. And believe it or not, the girl he was going to marry gets into an accident, and guess what? Her brain has failed. So Kadir Khan comes up with another idea. He says, sir, I'm going to say it in Hindi. इनके दिल मिलते थे, इनके जज्बात मिलते थे, इनके अरमान मिलते थे, इनके दिमाग भी मिलेगा. Which means, they were in agreement with the heart, they had same emotions, they had same feelings, so now even their brains will match. So he looks very serious and he says, So he opens the deep freeze and he takes out the brain, and cut to this girl wakes up as Amar, who says, who knows now who has killed me, him, whatever. Now the thing is, in 95, I don't know how these things worked. Today we are cooked if we do anything like this. One of the biggest films like Amar Akbar Anthony, right? I don't know how many, it was a huge hit. There was a scene where it was a film on cultural unity. So there was a Hindu, Muslim, and Christian, and the mother in an accident needed blood. So we actually have a scene where she's lying there, and long, tubes of blood is coming direct from these three guys into a bottle which is going into her. And we were all overawed as kids, wow. But today we are going to be killed. I don't know of, today everybody, as they say, every Tom, Dick and Harry has become a critic. And I remember Intel, one of the guys telling me that when they launched the Pentium 3 chip, I think in 99 or something, everything was fine. All the things were shipped out. Till one small vendor kind of discovered an error in the chip, which would have emerged only if you launched 20,000 spacecrafts, which I don't think anyone would with one chip. But the fact is, he published it on his blog or whatever called Tom's Hardware, and that spread like wildfire. And Pentium had to withdraw all the chips, and they lost $450 million because of one guy's blog. And today we are in the same position, where people, I don't know why and how cinema is consumed and perceived, but I assume, like every other information, one half of it is from the right hemisphere and one half of it is from the left hemisphere. So yes, we have a lot of suspension of disbelief, but even Spider-Man has to say that this genetically modified spider bit me, for us to believe that he became a Spider-Man. Or Superman had a kryptonite. So we need to believe that there is some science behind the power. So in our case, where we are trying to do realistic kind of movies, where we are going to show like a woman delivered a child in an auto or whatever, we need to do our research. Otherwise, as an audience, I'm going to ask, my God, what if he gets tetanus? How is he going to cut the umbilical cord? And so on and so forth. So I think so far, before the internet, research was really a huge problem. It was all based on 6 degrees of separation. You call this one, who calls that one, who calls that one, and half your life is going in, trying to meet a lawyer or somebody or the other who's going to put some sense into what you're researching. I've personally gone to London and registered in British Museum Library and spent days trying to unearth information. After the internet, it did become easy, but it's still not really easy because sometimes we don't know what are we looking for, We probably will waste hours because we've used the wrong word, like I want affidavit, or I've used deed or something wrong word, and it's taken me 6 hours to realize that, oh, the information is not going to be here, it's going to be there. And there's something about interaction which is still missing. Maybe with VR it might become easy, but currently we don't have that interaction with the internet. So I think what this organization is doing is really a godsend. And I've been speaking to Vanita and her team, and they have promised to give me a kick-ass solution to my problems. And I think it's very, very, very useful today to have this kind of a, initiative.
Thank you. Sanjay Tripathi, perhaps you'd like to reflect not only on experts correcting our mistakes, but also where we might use experts more positively in developing programs.
Coming from journalistic background and making documentaries, it was somehow I was trained to get the research inputs and use it in my production. But I will share one experience which I had, and I realized that how important it is to get a technical expert's opinion and how it can enhance the emotional content of your film or anything. So my recent experience with my film is Club 60. When I had written the script, I gave it to a psychiatrist to read it. The reason was that the Farooq Saab's character in the film had to come out of depression. So he was going through a depression, and he has lost his son, and he had to come out of depression by the end of the film, has to fall back in love with life again. And he has taken it very badly, and the wife, which is being played by Sarika, she has rather taken it a little strongly, and she has joined hospital and she's working. So I just wanted the psychiatrist to advise me that whether this progression of Farooq Saab's character of coming out of depression has been dealt with correctly or not. Then she suggested me one thing which I added in my film. She said, when these couples, when they lose their child and one of them goes into depression, the other one suffers from a severe guilt. And why don't you put a scene where the mother asks that why I'm not suffering from that depression. And I had this scene where Sarika ji asks the psychiatrist and says that why he's under depression and I'm not. Did I love my son less? Now that was such a poignant scene which really enhanced the whole thing, and perhaps I could get a good scene for my film. And in many screenings, whether in India or abroad, a lot of people came and told me that they have been through that kind of experience, and some relative, some friend, or somewhere they have lost this, and it was exactly the same feeling they had gone through. So I think it is that empowerment for a filmmaker or storyteller to, when you interact with such experts, they give you that kind of input, as I told you in this case. And there have been so many examples and many other things, but I think that the sense of empowerment which a person gets, you get that the drama from very unexpected quarters, because you have a very limited vision in the sense that whatever your experiences have been. So when this kind of value addition comes from an expert, the whole vista, the whole dimension increases, and you get something really, really important and which really enhances the merit of your storytelling.
So Suhail Thari, welcome. Have you got a similar story or a different take on this?
My last film, Ankur Arora murder case, was a case of medical negligence. And when I got the script, it had been worked out really in detail. And when I read it, I couldn't understand the medical scenes at all because it had a lot of jargon. And I was wondering how I'm actually going to picturize something like this, because the experience that one has of going to the hospital is you see the last door, and after that the doctors go inside and you don't know what is going to happen to the patient, and you're left behind. And fortunately or unfortunately, in our films also, in Indian films, the exposure that one had was that the doctor would come and say that now pray, and he would go inside, and the patients and patients' relatives are left behind praying. So, or if somebody was a little more a little more forthcoming, he would show some shots of the light, the typical the OT light would come on, then and a hand, and then maybe one meter that keeps going beep beep beep, and that's it. So I also had very very limited exposure. So I was completely at sea as to how I was going to actually shoot something like this. But fortunately, my producer, who was also the writer of the film, Vikram Bhatt, was very supportive, and he said that, no, I'll give you a doctor on set, and while you're shooting it. And I had a doctor, Dr. Amitabh Ghosh, who was there with me. And he actually literally held my hand and took me through the scenes, because I had never seen anything. I didn't know what it looked like, what it felt like. And Vikram said one more thing, that shoot it very dramatically. I said, okay. Now, how do you shoot something that you've never seen in your life dramatically? But I think it was a great help, the fact that a doctor was with me. The first scene that we shot was a splenectomy, which meant that the spleen had been damaged and they were removing the spleen. And so I also got a little excited, and I said, okay, let's open it and show it. So I got something made, and a prosthetic guy to make it for me, and then we would get live mutton from the market nearby, because it actually looked like mutton pieces. And slowly I was also kind of getting a little more courageous, and I was thinking that, okay, fine, this is the time to actually show it. But throughout the scenes, one thing that I realized is that there's so much of drama that happens inside the OT. I mean, we never get to see what is happening when a patient's life is being saved. We think that only policemen, cops, or army men have drama in their lives, but actually there's so much drama that happens behind OT, which we never get to see. And which is what I was able to eventually show. I actually started feeling that each scene was like a action scene. You could actually create so much of action within the OT. I had seen 1 or 2 episodes of Grey's Anatomy, and they had done it really well. But actually doing it on the set myself with a doctor was a completely different experience. And one of my fears were that if this film, because it's about medical negligence, all the doctors are going to come after us. We're very sure that we're going to be, if not jailed, at least, we'll have some cases against us. But fortunately, when the film was screened at some festivals, in places like Lucknow, Kanpur, because this film was shown on Jagran Festival, and we showed it in, I think, 8 or 10 cities. And at each of the places, there were at least 15 to 20 doctors who had obviously come with, their sleeves rolled up, and okay, we are going to tell you how, where all you've goofed up. But fortunately for me, because the doctor was there, we did not have any medical or technical mistakes. So I was completely saved on that count, and they were only giving excuses for why he could have made that mistake. So which was very, I think, encouraging for me, because it was perhaps the first film which had so much of detail in terms of medical drama and actually what happens behind the scenes.
So that we've heard from the creative side. Now perhaps we can hear from the expert side and what it's like to be a professional advising us with our program making. Perhaps Dr. Badwa, we could start with you. I believe you've worked on a number of projects with Third Eye. Perhaps you can give us an insight into your approach to that kind of work, and whether you felt it was effective or not, really.
Thank you. Firstly, it's a privilege to be here, and it's great getting out of the OR. And talking of drama in the OR, the first question is, what kind of music do you like, rock or jazz? Okay, but jokes apart, my first exposure was when Vinta called us over and said that they're trying to introduce accuracy in filmmaking, and they wanted the views of doctors through different specialities regarding their experiences in medical school, in the hospital, in the OR. I work at the Kokilaben Hospital, so we got across a group of doctors, and it was really interesting, to say the least. We met with people from the creative field, and it was generally, they were trying to pick up brains into what life is through medical school, the challenges one faces, the trials, heartbreak, all that. And then what is it like being a doctor, working in a hospital, the challenges you face, and the drama, and stuff like that. So this was our first exposure. It was an extremely interesting interaction, and for both sides, and also helped us to know the kind of problems you face while creating something, and also gives us hope. Like, we'd like to see Grey's Anatomy, Dr. House made in India. We have the wherewithal, the technical expertise, so why not? So that was it for starters. And from the other side, you see, as people in the medical profession, we don't advertise. So like Vinta said, television, print, or screen is often the first exposure which someone staying in a little town has to medical information. So with great power also comes great responsibility. So we feel that accuracy of reporting really helps. One small story I can just share with you, which highlights the power of the media and accuracy of reporting. I done an article with the Times about 2 years ago on sleep apnea and the recent kind of advances we have in the field. So one day I was in my clinic and there was a gentleman who came in on a wheelchair. He was literally strapped to the wheelchair. He would nod off to sleep. He had a CPAP machine, but still he would just nod off to sleep. And his mother came and said, "Doc, you have to do something for him. He's a candidate for a kidney transplant, and his surgeon says, till this is sorted out, this can't happen." So this is the power of the media. A small article 2 years ago was read, and they landed up. So he successfully underwent a robotic procedure. He has had his kidney transplant and is an active and useful member of society today. So that's my take on it, that we look to the media for accuracy of reporting. We're always there. We have a team in place at 24/7. Any questions you have, we're always there. And I think it's a partnership, and this is a great beginning and a great platform, and we look forward to more interactions. The other thing is, like, just straying a bit, when there is a massive epidemic in the city, there again, we look for accuracy from the media, interaction with health professionals, so that sad stories like somebody who's been diagnosed with swine flu and jumps off and commits suicide doesn't happen. This happens if there's a partnership, if there's exchange of information with professionals, and we need to reach out and make sure that accurate information is disseminated. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting. Working with Vinta has always been very inspiring kind of a stuff, and I think getting people together probably can only make a change in the society. As regards my field is concerned, being a gynecologist, I continuously confront some kind of a drama. Yeah. and the field of obstetrics and gynecology as such, actually speaking, has a lot of social implications and lot of legal implications, because anything to do with abortion, anything to do with deliveries, anything to do with paternity, anything to do with marital discordancy, many of those kind of family planning, most of these issues have some kind of a legal implication somewhere all the time. And I must say that there is a huge gap in the first place about the real knowledge that is what needs to be shown. And the greatest example which I can cite even in today's days is I very recently saw this movie called Badlapur, which I liked, really speaking, to a great extent. But I realized that the earlier first few shots, which were about medicine, particularly about hospitals, here is a situation that the heroine has been shot at a very short distance by a bullet, and she is taken to the hospital, and obviously she is serious, and her husband is informed on phone that she is very serious, and the husband is coming to the hospital. He comes to the hospital. The doctor specifically tells him that your wife is extremely serious and you need to come and accompany him immediately. So the husband goes into the room, and to my greatest surprise and everybody's greatest surprise, and my medical colleague will almost laugh at what I'm going to say if he has not seen the movie, the woman is not on ventilator. She has got a bullet in her neck just a couple of hours back. She is not on ventilator. She is talking. Then why she is serious, God alone knows. And then she has got some oxygen mask from which she is speaking. And when you speak, you obviously bring out some kind of heat. Yeah, so you will get that kind of a fogging, but there is no fogging. And in a span of 30 seconds, the woman just dies. And after the husband realizes that there's something amiss over here, a young woman who has died such a sudden kind of a death, but the husband just whispers, call the doctor, call the doctor. And then after some time, 2 nurses come in. They first stand at a distance of 4 feet from the patient. Then one goes ahead as if she's marching in a military or something of that sort, gives a cardiac shock, walks backwards 4 feet, stands, looks at the monitor, and then the other lady announces, she is dead. So the gap is huge. And I guess I have a love and hate relationship, particularly being a gynecologist with the media, because you all can really make or break my practice. Yeah. Now, when I talk of using ventouse or vacuum for delivering a patient, yeah, the reaction has suddenly got changed because of Amir Khan. Yeah. So patient, I said that, well, look here, there's a problem, and that's why we have to apply a vacuum or a ventouse and get the baby. No trouble. Amir Khan, go ahead, bindas, no problem. Okay. So they've really made my life easy. And on the other hand, there are situations, and which I'll really quote from what Deepa said, that impact of Amar, Akbar, Anthony kind of a stuff is so much on our society that when there is a patient who is bleeding after delivery, and I'm begging to the relatives, please organize for the blood, they are sitting calm and quiet. Doctor Sahab, there is no difficulty. I have the same blood group. I will donate my blood, and you can immediately put it to my wife. There is no problem. There is no need of running around. Yeah? That is a kind of an impact, practically speaking, that is there on people. Yeah, that this is how the things can be organized. So I guess what is seen in the movies has got such a deep-rooted impact onto the minds of the people in the society that there is a huge amount of responsibility that we all collectively have to take upon ourselves in order to make things better for us. And I had a personal experience because for the organization of which I am a founder, that's the Patient Safety Alliance, we tried to create some kind of a social media, and I'm happy to say that on YouTube, there is only one single short film of 4 minutes which talks of medication errors made in Hindi called Avoiding Medication Errors, and that's the single film in Hindi on the whole YouTube world, and that is made by Patient Safety Alliance for the benefit of common people. And when I made that film by taking few people with me, I realized that it's a Herculean task, and there's a huge gap between the people who write the script, people who shoot it, and I actually had to stand, literally speaking, like a watchdog in front of them and see to it that the things are written rightly or projected rightly. So there is a huge gap, there is a big impact, and there's a lot more that is possible from medical as well as legal point of view.
Namaskar. First of all, this divide between experts and, I would have liked to be in the creative side because I have a huge problem with this experts thing, So I have been in special education for 23 years and working with all children and families for the past 3 decades. And currently as an independent researcher, I didn't align with anybody because then you have to follow that script, And in the last 15 or 20 years of the research and clinical practice and life experiences with people, there are 2 issues that get me very, very agitated. I have to tell you this, children form 44% of our society, 44%, and nobody fights for them, okay? We have Save the Tiger, Save the Dalit, Save the Minority, Save the Majority, Save the, empower women, I don't know, save the tree, save the Amazon, whatever. But the most important and most fundamental resource of society, nobody lobbies for. So I'm here, I'm interested in adults, I'm interested in the mother, the woman, because not just as mother, she is the primary caregiver, not just of the family, but of society. Recently I was a panelist at Madhu Kishwar and Rajiv Malhotra's NGO rational policy for NGOs, There was this big thing that happened. So finally I get the mic and they say, but how are children related to NGOs? The agitation comes from the fact that 23 years of working with special children, with severe disabilities, mixed disabilities, as well as from the lower socioeconomic strata, is that what terrifies me is that so-called normal children that we talk of, I see those problems in our so-called normal children today, what we used to deal with our mentally challenged children. Secondly, the categorization that we've talked of. This dividing in terms of societies, what bothers me is the Indian child, not this, special child. I met somebody the other day, he said, autism is a big problem in our society. Is it? We're constantly talking of rape and child abuse and whatever, but in my PhD, what came up as the biggest risk factor was this decline in emotional investment, what you call decline in emotional and physical availability of parents. Somebody talked of safety nets at the NGO, somebody talked of, censor boards at the NGO thing, somebody talked of animal rights. I'm not coming here because, in India, families were safety nets. We have outsourced our children to the service industry today. And that is why we need the experts. I've been an expert, I have nothing against experts. But today, instead of listening to your mother-in-law or your nosy neighbor or some uncle or some wise person, we first come to the counselor or they come to the person with the PhD. Why I did my PhD? I did it very late in my life. At 42, I started my PhD work. Because today with a doctorate, people listen to me. But as the teacher of your child or the principal of your school or your neighbor, people will not listen to you. So the expert has become, so the psychiatrist, you see on the panel, Dr. Harish Shetty, a dear friend of mine, but we have these great fights, about how the expert has taken over. And they come back and tell me, like, I'm from Bangalore, so brown rice is what we used to eat. We used to cook in coconut oil. We've turned out fine, no great health issues or whatever. But today, it is being sold as good, and it's 100 rupees a kilo in some exotic shop. So I have a problem with this whole expert thing that, and this fact of what is it rape? Is it autism? Is it learning disability? That is not the problem. What parents are doing to children today is what I term as child abuse. I have 2-year-olds going to 5 different classes, going for structured classes, kangaroo kids at play. A child moves from an AC home to an AC lobby, to an AC school, to an AC car, to what I call parental taxi cells, dropped from one activity, structured activity to another, and then horror of all horrors to a structured play group. Hillary Clinton wrote a book on It Takes a Village to Raise a Child. That was always our issue. Vasudeva Kutumbam is what? Everybody raised your child. You had multiple caregivers. Your neighbor was your kaki, somebody else, you called your maid. Today they call them by name, small children. Everybody, you travel by train, that's a good thing of, using public transport. A child comes in, everybody has their 2-bit wisdom, everybody will take care, somebody will say, put a sweater. This is what we were, but if it comes from Hillary Clinton, yes. This is how we should all get together, and then we have play groups. No. I think the only thing that I have to say here is the biggest risk factor that I have seen in terms, and our movies, I think, Deepa said, I thought of Amar Akbar Anthony immediately when she said, and I'm still in awe of Amar Akbar Anthony. I'm still in awe. I mean, look at Sholay, it's been put together by 5 different, they've copied frame to frame for Sholay from English films. But I still watch Dharmendra and Mausi Ji Bhi Taiyar and Basanti Bhi Taiyar. I think it's phenomenal. Indians we have great rasa, we are interesting, we are creative. Why are we letting that out to bring in this great structure? Why research? It's all there. We had great indigenous systems. from 1750 to 1950, at 1750, and these are OECD reports, they are not from some saffron brigade or whatever. 1750, Angus Madison writes, we had 29% of the world's GDP. China and we were 57% of the world's GDP. In 1950, 200 years post-colonization, we become 1.6 and China becomes 6%. And the horror of all horrors, and something that worries me a great lot, is that in 1750, and today I checked out because I'm writing a paper for the Indo-Sweden Gender Network Initiative, is that we had 100,000 schools in each presidency. 100,000 schools in each presidency. Please check Dharampal's work. Gandhiji had made a statement at Chatham House in London. In the next 100 years also, we cannot revive the beautiful tree that the Britishers uprooted and let it perish. Today, we are 83% illiterate. So from a civilization of entrepreneurs and craftsmen, we have been transformed into a nation of clerks, security guards, and British sepoys. Why security guards? Because they are the highest, second highest employing agency in India today, which should make us think, because for me in my PhD, I'll end with this. The way we are raising children today, the bigger problem than rape and all that we talk about and autism is that there is a great decline in emotional intelligence and critical inquiry, not only of our children, but the parents and families who raise them. And secondly, 93.7% of women, and I did a study across 1,100 mothers across socioeconomic strata, rich, poor, literate, illiterate, 93.7% complained of fatigue. Fatigue. That is the problem, not rape or the other things. They are there, but they are the fringe issues. So I think if you're talking of child rearing, we are talking of parenting, I think the focus needs to reclaim our communities and families and bring back our traditional systems. We need to reclaim our civilizational heritage. Thank you.
I want to open this out to questions, but perhaps I can pick up to some extent on what you said there and ask a question. Can the media make a difference? I quite understand what you're saying there, and I think it's just as true in the UK, this problem of emotional illiteracy and the difficulty of not having those kind of support networks that families traditionally used to have. Can the media make a difference to this situation, or is the media part of the problem? And if it's the latter, then what can we do as a group of interested parties to do something about that? Anybody got any thoughts on that question?
I don't think civilization is one fixed entity. I mean, it's perpetually evolving, and this interaction has to carry on. On a lighter note, I would say, Vinita, the only thing you're going to do is kill my favorite scene, which is when the doctor would say, in a hill station, le jao. Every time somebody was ill. So we used to see all these lovely shots of the snow and the mountains where you would discover love. Now that is dead. Now some doctor will say, no, this is schizophrenia, give him this thing, that thing. That's the only regret. No, but I'm joking. I think we need this interaction because knowledge is evolving. And new theories and new discoveries will constantly add to civilization, which is a growing organic thing. So I kind of disagree that we need to go back to something. I think we need to interact with the future and the past that we are.
Reclaiming your civilizational heritage didn't mean going back to whatever. I think what is important is, there is this serial Diya Aur Baati Hum on, which has the highest TRP ratings, and I think whether it's the top stars or whether it's whoever, I think the media has a huge role to play. There are a lot of people who get in touch with me regarding various issues because it's not about creating new research or theory or knowledge systems, it's just about dispelling ignorance. So, there are these fancy words of, women's empowerment or, what would you say? Equality between men and women. And there's this great article written by Meg Luxton. She comes from Canada, which has the highest HDI indicators.
And she says, they talk of the woman in terms of her role as worker and mother, even for Canada. And she raises a protest about it. Because she says, you are assigning the woman to be one in terms of the material value she carries, and the second as the caregiver. Now, what happens to this is that her role is taken to as then the rights, what they fight for, become unequal wages, paternity leave, and those kind of issues, which she's not happy about. And she says you need to get something called the social reproductive theory, which says that, Weber's individualism brought back this hand over children to families. And then she says, no, you should not hand over children to families. It is the social or collective responsibility of the society to raise children. That's what we always did. So when the media comes, and if you watch Diya Aur Bati Hum, all these issues of pay, and the favorite daughter-in-law is the one who negotiates her own spaces, who gets her mother-in-law's approval, but yet follows her dream. She does what she wants to, which is and there is no, mollycoddling or whatever. She fights fair and fair, but she negotiates her spaces. There is no aggression, and that's how collectivist societies always worked. You didn't fight for rights. You were conscious of your responsibilities, and I think Balika Vadhu does that to a large extent. There are some issues that I have a problem with, but largely dealing and negotiating spaces come very, very strongly, and that is why I think it's still the longest, and I watch it regularly, and I feel this collectivistic, moving back, because this is what the West is also doing. They are moving back from individualism to collectivism. So I think the media plays such a huge role, because I know mothers-in-law or husbands or neighbors or, whatever, sisters-in-law, treating their women or children or mothers-in-law better after watching Diya